So this is still the evidence part against him, continued. I'm going to have to decompress for this for a while and go take my dog for a walk or something, because this is really gloomy stuff, but people want to know. Epstein purchased gifts for his victims, rented cars for them, had flowers delivered to their high schools, and paid for braces and testing for sexually transmitted infections. To corroborate the victims' stories and solidify the case against him, the Palm Beach Police Department pulled Epstein's trash and found floral delivery instructions and a report card for one of the girls. They retrieved receipts for the cars he rented for the girls and the gifts he gave them. Independent from each other, the victims corroborated the evidence by telling the identical story, including details about his private parts. Several of Epstein's victims claimed that Epstein would invite Nadia Marcinkova, a young woman over 18 that Epstein called his Yugoslavian sex slave, to join in while Epstein took photos of the girls engaged in sex acts. He displayed the photographs on the walls of his mansion. One victim explained that she often had sex with Marcinkova, who used strap-ons and other sex toys, while Epstein watched, directed, and choreographed. The same victim stated that Epstein had actually held her down, raped her when she was 16. Later, he apologized and paid her $1,000. The Palm Beach Police Department ultimately identified approximately 28 girls from 14 to 17 who he sexually assaulted. This was not a he said, she said situation, argued retired Palm Beach Police Department Chief Michael Ryder, who supervised the investigation. This was 50-something she's and one he. And all these she's all basically told the same story. The Palm Beach Police Department obtained overwhelming corroboration of the victims' allegations, including phone records, copies of written phone messages from the girls found in Epstein's trash, and Epstein's flight logs, which confirmed that Epstein was in his Palm Beach estate on days when the girls were scheduled to massage him. They also obtained an arrest warrant for him, but in the first of a series of aberrant prosecutorial moves, Palm Beach County State Attorney Barry Krishner referred the charges to a grand jury. A spokesperson for the state attorney's office later remarked that it was unprecedented to present a sexualized violence case to a grand jury. Under Florida law, grand juries hear first-degree murder cases. Furthermore, instead of presenting evidence about all identified victims, at least 13 had been identified at this point. Krishner's office only presented evidence to the grand jury about one of his victims and sought only one count of prostitution. Investigating officers found probable cause to charge Epstein with much, much more serious offenses. One count of lewd and lascivious molestation and 4 counts of unlawful sexual activity with a minor. Ultimately, Epstein was indicted for solicitation of prostitution, a much less serious offense than soliciting sex with a minor. Immediately, Epstein's defense team lobbied the prosecutors for pretrial diversion, avoiding any sentence. During this pressure campaign from Epstein's defense teams, the Palm Beach Police Department began to suspect that the Palm Beach State's Attorney's Office was undermining their investigation. Before the indictment, Ryder accused the local prosecutors of giving Epstein preferential treatment and demanded Krishner recuse himself. Finally, the Palm Beach Police Department referred its investigation to the FBI. The FBI began investigating Epstein and his personal assistants for molesting girls aged 14 to 17 in Florida, New York, and New Mexico. Investigators found that the Epstein employed an international modeling agency. Modeling agencies, here we go. Yeah, an international modeling agency to recruit girls as young as 13 from Europe, Ecuador, and Brazil. According to Maritza Vasquez, a former bookkeeper for MC2 Modeling Management, the modeling agency recruited the girls who lived in Epstein's mansion, and Epstein paid for their visas. By 2018, investigators had identified approximately 80 females who alleged that Epstein had molested or sexually abused them from 2001 to 2006. Okay, we're in part C now, which is called Epstein's Unprecedented Process and Alex Acosta's Abdication. Remember, after all this happened, Trump made Alex Acosta part of his first, right after this happened, brought him into his administration. Like an attaboy. In 2007, Jay Lefkowitz, one of Epstein's attorneys, met with Acosta. Instead of meeting at the United States Attorney's Office, which is customary throughout the Department of Justice, the two men, both of whom were former attorneys with Kirkland and Ellis in Washington, D.C., met for breakfast at the Marriott in West Palm Beach. In an email documenting the meeting, Lefkowitz wrote Acosta saying, "Thank you for the commitment you made to me during our October 12th meeting. You assured me that your office would not contact any of the identified individuals, potential witnesses, or potential civil claimants and the respective counsel in this matter." Another of Epstein's lawyers emailed Acosta and directed him to refrain from having anyone from his office contact the victims. In 2007, Acosta agreed to an unprecedented non-prosecution agreement, NPA, because it's almost like an NDA, right? Among other things, the NPA gave Epstein control over whether his victims could sue him civilly. The NPA further stipulated that Epstein's attorneys could consult DOJ about the selection of civil lawyers for each victim, that Epstein would pay those lawyers, and that he would not contest liability. The purpose of these stipulations was to hide Epstein's assaults from the public. Acosta allowed Epstein to stipulate that he was not admitting guilt by paying off his victims. Acosta also agreed that if anyone made state or federal Freedom of Information FOIA requests, the government would notify Epstein before granting the required disclosures. Thus, the deal ensured that Epstein's lawyers were always apprised and the victims were erased. Among other legal luminaries, Epstein's defense team included Dershowitz, who gained notoriety for defending football legend O.J. Simpson from charges that he murdered his former wife and her companion. Epstein's bench also included Kenneth Starr, the independent prosecutor who prosecuted President Bill Clinton during his impeachment hearings for lying about his affair with legal intern Monica Lewinsky. With an arsenal of nuclear firepower behind him, Lefkowitz leveraged the deal of the century. Starr told Acosta that his client would not agree to register as a sex offender, a statutory requirement. Starr also rejected an addendum to the NPA that allowed victims to sue for compensation. Starr leveraged his connections at the DOJ to request a review of the agreement, which took over a year. During that time, the FBI continued to identify more victims and evidence. Despite substantial physical evidence and multiple witnesses, federal prosecutors and Epstein's defense attorneys entered the highly abnormal NPA. 3 strands of this NPA should be noted. First, Acosta abandoned any efforts to federally prosecute Epstein and instead allowed him to plead to 2 state child prostitution charges. Although federal charges exposed Epstein to life imprisonment, Epstein received an 18-month sentence. Under the NPA, Epstein admitted to committing only one offense against one underage girl who was labeled a prostitute, who was 14 when Epstein raped her. In remarking on the treatment of the 14-year-old, her attorney stated she was taken advantage of twice, first by Epstein, then by the criminal justice system that labeled a 14-year-old girl as a prostitute. Epstein agreed to register as a sex offender and to pay restitution to 36 victims the FBI had identified. Yeah, all this evidence, the FBI has all of it. Second, the NPA immunized Epstein and 4 of his accomplices from all federal charges. Incomprehensibly, Acosta was also granted immunity from federal charges to any potential co-conspirators. What makes this concession striking is that the NPA did not name the potential co-conspirators, thereby leaving the scope of the immunity to include limitless other accomplices, participants, facilitators, and rich, powerful elites, all of whom were raping girls at Epstein's estates and on his plane, who were not identified at the time the NPA was executed. And in fact, the NPA shut down the FBI investigation and eliminated additional victims and perpetrators in perpetuity. The degree to which it is unprecedented to immunize undiscovered criminal actors cannot be understated. This is disgusting. And we already know that the FBI has all of this. So when people are yelling for the Epstein files to be released, remember this is all in there. There's a lot more. I'm not done. This will be a whole little series here. Thank you for caring.